Imagine for a moment that you are living in ancient Judea, a world of dusty streets, vibrant marketplaces, and the quiet whispers of hope and fear weaving through the crowds. But in this world, your eyes cannot see. Darkness surrounds you, not just the absence of light, but a weight pressing on your heart. You hear the voices, the laughter, the footsteps of children running free. You feel the warmth of the sun on your face, but cannot see its golden rays dancing on the stone walls. Your world is shaped by sound, touch, and faith, but it is incomplete. What does it mean to live in this kind of blindness? To know the beauty of the world only through the stories others tell? To long for a glimpse of what lies beyond your immediate reality? And then, one day, to have your sight restored. To see for the very first time the faces of those you love, the vibrant colors of a blooming flower, the vastness of the sky stretching endlessly above you. The miracle of sight, so ordinary to some, becomes for you the dawn of a new life. This is not just a story from the dusty pages of history. It is a living encounter. It is a sacred moment when divine love meets human need. When Jesus, the Son of God, touches the blind man's eyes and opens them to the light, he does far more than restore physical sight. He reveals the very heart of God, a heart full of compassion, truth, and an invitation to transformation. And he does the same for each of us today. Welcome to this journey with us at Biblescope. Here, we come to find light, truth, and purpose in Jesus. In the Christ Focus, we pause to reflect on his life, his love, and his teachings that continue to change hearts across centuries. If you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to grow closer to him. Stay with us until the end, as this story of healing holds a deeper meaning, calling us to a living, breathing relationship with Jesus. The story of Jesus healing the blind man from John chapter 9 is a masterpiece of God's grace. It is rich with layers of meaning that speak to our deepest spiritual needs. This miracle is not only about the restoration of eyesight, but also about the unveiling of spiritual truth, the breaking down of barriers, and the awakening of faith. Imagine the blind man's world before Jesus: isolated, limited, vulnerable. His blindness would have marked him as an outcast in society, someone dependent on the kindness of others. People might have assumed his blindness was a punishment, a sign of sin. But Jesus shatters this narrative, showing us that suffering is not always a result of wrongdoing, and that God's love transcends human assumptions. In this story, Jesus approaches the man with tender compassion. There is no grand spectacle or dramatic display here, just a humble act. Jesus makes mud with his own hands, gently anoints the man's eyes, and tells him to wash in the pool of Siloam. This quiet, intimate moment reveals the profound truth that Jesus meets us in the ordinary and the messy places of life. When the man obeys and opens his eyes, something incredible happens. Light floods into his world, and with it, understanding and new purpose. But healing the man's physical blindness is only the beginning. What follows is a spiritual journey. Questions, challenges, skepticism, and ultimately, a declaration of faith that points to the divine identity of Jesus himself. This story invites us to consider our own blindness, areas in our hearts where we struggle to see clearly. Are there doubts, fears, or habits that keep us from fully embracing the light of God's love? Like the blind man, we are invited to step out in faith, to trust Jesus' touch, and to open our eyes to new life. As we walk through this story together, we will explore not only the miracle itself, but what it reveals about Jesus' nature, his humanity that understands our pain, and his divinity that brings healing and salvation. We'll reflect on the responses of those around the man and what their reactions teach us about faith and skepticism today. Most importantly, we'll ask, what does this teach us about following Jesus in our own lives? How can we cultivate a vision that goes beyond physical sight, seeing with the eyes of faith, love, and truth? Jesus is not distant or merely a figure from history. He is near, reaching out to us now, offering healing and transformation. This story is an invitation to come closer, to be seen, and to be changed by His grace. So, stay with us. Let your heart be open. Allow this encounter with Jesus and the blind man to awaken a deeper hunger for God's light and truth in your life. Welcome to Biblescope, where every story is a doorway into the divine. Let's begin. Imagine the dusty streets of ancient Judea, where the sun beats down relentlessly and the daily hustle of life unfolds in a world untouched by modern technology or conveniences. Among the throngs of people moving through marketplaces, children playing, and merchants calling out their wares, there is one man whose world is starkly different, a man who cannot see. This blind man's life is shaped by shadows and silence in ways most of us can barely imagine. Every step he takes is guided not by sight, but by trust in the sounds around him, the hands that steady him, and the faith that sustains him. His days are filled with challenges that go beyond the physical. Navigating a world built for the sighted, he faces social isolation, often misunderstood and overlooked. In a culture that prized physical wholeness, blindness marked him as vulnerable, dependent, and, tragically, sometimes even seen as cursed. Yet beneath this veil of darkness lies a heart full of hope. Hope for a better tomorrow. Hope for a healing touch. Hope for a light to pierce through the darkness that has been his constant companion since birth. The blind man's experience invites us to step into a world that is at once foreign and deeply familiar. How often do we, too, walk in darkness? Not always physical blindness, but blindness of the heart. Moments when we cannot see clearly, when doubt clouds our vision, when fear and pain obscure the light of God's presence. This blindness is what Jesus came to heal. Not only the blindness of the eyes, but the blindness of the soul. When Jesus encounters the blind man, he does not see just a man lacking sight. He sees the image of God, beloved and precious. He sees the potential for transformation and new life. In this moment, Jesus looks beyond society's labels and human limitations. What does he see in this man that others do not? Perhaps it is faith hidden beneath years of struggle. Perhaps it is a soul longing for connection and truth. Perhaps it is a reflection of the blindness in all of us, our need for God's healing light. The story of this blind man becomes a mirror for our own lives. It calls us to examine where we, too, are blind, where we struggle to perceive God's hand at work, where our vision is clouded by sin, doubt, or despair. It reminds us that Jesus' compassion is not limited by our weaknesses. He meets us exactly where we are. As we explore this story, let us open our hearts to see ourselves in the blind man's shoes, to feel his loneliness, to understand his hope, and to recognize the transformative power of Jesus' love. Because in the end, this is not just a story about physical sight restored. It is a story about new vision, a vision of God's kingdom breaking into our broken world, a vision that invites us all to walk in the light of His grace. As we turn our eyes to Jesus in this story, we see more than a miracle worker performing an astonishing deed. We see the heart of God Himself stepping gently into the life of a man burdened by darkness. This encounter is not simply about restoring sight. It is about divine love reaching out to meet human need in the most personal, intimate way. Imagine Jesus walking along the dusty road, surrounded by His disciples and the curious crowd. The noise of the marketplace fades as His attention settles on the blind man sitting by the roadside. In a world that often shunned the vulnerable, Jesus pauses. He does not hurry past. He does not avoid the man as others might have done. Instead, He stops, approaches, and looks deeply into his eyes that have never known the gift of sight. This moment shatters cultural and religious barriers. In Jesus' time, a person with a disability might have been labeled unclean or even considered cursed by God. Touching such a person could make someone ceremonially unclean, causing others to avoid contact. Yet Jesus, full of compassion, reaches out His hands. His love crosses every social boundary. What follows is a tender yet powerful act. Jesus takes the dust of the earth and, mixing it with his own saliva, gently forms mud and anoints the blind man's eyes. To our modern ears, this might sound strange, even unsettling. But in this simple, humble gesture, there is profound meaning. The mud is not just physical. It symbolizes the rawness and messiness of human life. Jesus does not come to us with a clean, distant holiness that ignores our brokenness. No, he enters our imperfections, our doubts, our struggles. He uses what is at hand, earth and spit, reminding us that God meets us in the ordinary and the earthy realities of life. Then Jesus commands the man to go wash in the pool of Siloam, a place that means sent. This command is an invitation to obedience, trust, and participation. The man must take a step of faith, moving toward healing. The act of washing signifies more than physical cleansing. It is a symbol of spiritual renewal and surrender. In this intimate encounter, we see Jesus' humanity and divinity beautifully intertwined. He is fully God, with the power to heal and transform instantly. Yet he is also fully human, touching, speaking, inviting response. This blend of divine power and human tenderness reveals the heart of God's love, close, personal, and willing to enter our lives fully. What does this tell us about God's love for us today? It tells us that Jesus does not stand apart, distant from our pain and struggles. He steps into the messiness of our lives, meeting us where we are. His love is tender and hands-on, willing to get his hands dirty for our healing. How often do we try to hide our brokenness, fearing rejection? Jesus invites us to bring our wounds openly to him. He desires to heal not just our external hurts, but the deeper blindness of our hearts. His compassion breaks through shame, fear, and isolation. This encounter also teaches us how to relate to others in need. Like Jesus, we're called to reach out with tenderness and courage, crossing social and cultural barriers to offer love. True compassion does not shrink away from the uncomfortable or inconvenient. It sees the person, not their label or limitation. Jesus' act of healing the blind man is a divine invitation for us to experience his healing touch and to become agents of his compassion in a world longing for light. As we reflect on this moment, let us ask ourselves, how can we open our hearts to receive Jesus' tender love? And how can we, in turn, reach out to others with the same courage and care? In Jesus, divine love and human need meet. And in that meeting, life is transformed. The moment of healing in this story is nothing short of miraculous. Imagine the anticipation as the blind man, guided by Jesus' words, rises and makes his way toward the pool of Siloam. Every step is filled with faith in the command of a man he barely knows, but whom he senses carries the power to change his life. As he washes his eyes in the waters, something extraordinary happens. Light pierces the darkness. For the first time, he sees the world around him, not as shapes and shadows, but in vivid color and clarity. The faces of people he once only heard now come into focus. The sky stretches out above him, blue and limitless. Flowers bloom in brilliant hues, and the sun warms his skin with a newfound intimacy. This moment, this opening of physical sight, is breathtaking in its wonder. But it is more than a mere restoration of vision. It is a sign, a visible symbol of something deeper, spiritual awakening. Jesus' miracles are never just about the physical. They reveal God's truth through acts of love and power that awaken our souls. In healing the blind man, Jesus shows us that true sight is not only about seeing with our eyes, but about perceiving with our hearts. The man's new vision invites us to ask ourselves, where do we need healing in our own lives? What areas of our hearts remain blind, clouded by fear, doubt, pride, or pain? How often do we walk through life with spiritual blindness, unable to see the presence of God or the hope he offers? This healing challenges us to trust Jesus with the parts of ourselves that are broken or hidden. Like the blind man, we are invited to step forward in faith, to obey his commands even when the path is uncertain, and to experience transformation that reaches beyond the surface. Faith, trust, and transformation are intertwined in this story. The man's obedience to Jesus' instruction is an act of trust, a surrender that opens the door to healing. His transformation is not just physical, but spiritual. He moves from darkness into light, from isolation into community, from doubt into testimony. This miracle teaches us that Jesus' power is not limited by our limitations. His love reaches into the deepest places of our being, bringing light where there was darkness. His truth breaks through the blindness of the world, calling us to see ourselves, others, and God with new eyes. As we reflect on this story, we are invited to examine our own hearts. What blinds us? Where do we need Jesus' healing touch? How can we grow in faith and trust, allowing him to transform us more fully? The healing of the blind man is a profound reminder. Jesus does not simply restore what was lost. He offers something greater, a new vision for life, grounded in the light of his love and the truth of God's kingdom. Let us open our eyes, our hearts, and our lives to this healing. Let us step forward in faith, trusting that Jesus can transform us, just as he transformed the man who once sat in darkness, now seeing the world and God with eyes wide open. As the healed man returns to his community, his life forever changed. The reactions that meet him are as varied and complex as the crowd that first passed him by in blindness. His neighbors, the religious leaders, and the man himself become players in a drama that reveals much about human nature, faith, and the tension between sight and belief. Imagine this scene. The man who once sat in silence and darkness now walks confidently among those who knew him before. His eyes see the faces of neighbors who had grown accustomed to his absence from the visible world. Some greet him with astonished joy. "Isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?" they ask, marveling at the miracle that has taken place. Yet others greet him with suspicion, unsure of how to process this sudden, undeniable change. But the real tension arises when the Pharisees, the religious authorities of the day, enter the scene. To them, miracles performed by Jesus are not simply signs of God's kingdom breaking in. They are threats to their power, challenges to their understanding of the law and tradition. They demand answers skeptical and rigid, refusing to accept evidence that disrupts their worldview. The healed man becomes a witness not only to Jesus' power, but also to the struggle between seeing and believing, a struggle as old as humanity itself. His neighbors are caught between amazement and doubt. The Pharisees cling to skepticism and denial, and the man, who has physically gained sight, faces a deeper question. Will he also gain spiritual sight? This tension between spiritual openness and skepticism is something we recognize in our own lives. How often do we find ourselves questioning the work of God because it doesn't fit our expectations or because others challenge our faith? How often are we tempted to retreat into doubt when criticism comes, or when the journey of following Jesus seems difficult or uncertain? The story of a healed man teaches us that following Jesus is not always easy or popular. It often requires courage to stand firm in faith amid opposition. The man's bold declaration that Jesus must be from God because he healed him stands in contrast to the Pharisees' refusal to see the truth. What can we learn from this about our own spiritual journey? First, that faith is a choice we must make daily, especially when those around us question or reject what God is doing in our lives. Like the healed man, we are invited to bear witness to the light we have received, even if it means facing rejection. Second, this story reminds us that true spiritual sight often provokes resistance. The light of Jesus exposes not only darkness, but also the hardness of hearts unwilling to believe. We are called to persevere, trusting that God's truth will ultimately prevail. Finally, the community's response shows us that healing is not just personal, it is relational. The man's transformation challenges those around him to reconsider their own beliefs and openness to God's work. This invites us to support and encourage one another in faith, especially when doubts arise. In the face of doubt, criticism, and opposition, we are invited to hold fast to the vision Jesus gives us, to see not only with our eyes, but with the eyes of faith, hope, and love. As we reflect on this story, let us ask ourselves, how do we respond when our faith is challenged? Can we stand firm like the healed man, confident in the truth of Jesus' love and power? And how can we support others who are walking through seasons of spiritual struggle? The journey from blindness to sight is not just about physical healing. It is about the transformation of our entire being. And that transformation often unfolds in the midst of a community, amid both recognition and resistance. May we find courage in the healed man's example, trusting Jesus to guide us through the challenges and doubts that come our way, leading us ever deeper into the light of His truth. As we come to the heart of this story, we are invited into a deeply personal moment, a space where the ancient miracle touches our modern lives. The healing of the blind man is not just a historical event to marvel at from afar. It is a living invitation for each of us to reflect on our own spiritual sight and blindness. Take a moment now to quietly consider, in what areas of your life do you feel blind? Where do darkness, doubt, or confusion linger? Perhaps it is a struggle with fear, pain, or disappointment that clouds your vision. Or maybe it's a barrier of unforgiveness, pride, or uncertainty that keeps you from fully seeing God's presence and purpose. The beautiful truth in this story is that Jesus meets us exactly where we are, no matter how deep our blindness or brokenness. He does not wait for us to be perfect or ready. He reaches out His hands, touching the mud of our lives with the same tender love, inviting us to open our eyes and see. Jesus' healing is not a one-time event, but the beginning of an ongoing journey of transformation. To follow Him means to walk daily in the new light He gives, trusting that even when our sight fails, His love remains steadfast. This journey calls us to cultivate spiritual vision, learning to see not only with our eyes, but with our hearts. To see Jesus today means to recognize His presence in the ordinary moments, in the quiet whispers of grace, and in the powerful movements of love around us. How do we live in the reality of this healing every day? It starts with surrender, letting go of our need to control, to understand everything, and simply trusting Jesus to guide us. It means opening our hearts to His truth, allowing it to challenge and change us. Living in this new light also means sharing what we have received. Just as the healed man became a witness to Jesus' power and love, we too are called to share the light of Christ with those still walking in darkness. Our lives, transformed by His grace, become beacons of hope in a world longing for healing. The story reminds us that spiritual sight grows over time. There will be moments of clarity and moments of struggle. But Jesus' promise remains. He is the light of the world, and those who follow Him will never walk in darkness. As you reflect on this story, consider this question: what does it mean for you to truly see Jesus in your life right now? How can you invite His healing touch into the areas that feel dark or blind? Remember, Jesus is near, closer than you think, ready to open your eyes and your heart to the fullness of His love and truth. Let this story inspire you to take courageous steps forward in faith, to walk in the new light He provides, and to become a living testimony of His healing power. In this sacred encounter between Jesus and the blind man, we find not only a miracle of sight restored, but the very essence of what it means to follow Christ. A journey from darkness into light, from isolation into community, from blindness into vision. May your heart be opened, your faith deepened, and your eyes lifted to see Jesus more clearly each day. As we come to the close of this reflection, it's important to pause and let the profound truth of this story settle deeply in our hearts. The healing of the blind man is not merely a tale from long ago. a miracle recorded in Scripture for admiration or curiosity. It is far more than that. This story is a living invitation, an invitation from Jesus himself to step out of darkness and into the radiant light of God's unfailing love and truth. Jesus did not simply restore sight to a man physically blinded. He revealed to us the heart of God's kingdom, where brokenness meets healing, where isolation meets community, and where spiritual blindness is replaced with clarity and vision. The man's journey from darkness into light mirrors the journey each of us is invited to take. It is a path of transformation, renewal, an intimate relationship with the Savior who sees us fully and loves us completely. Now, let us bring this ancient miracle into the present moment, into your life. Imagine the places where your own vision feels clouded, areas where shadows linger and truth is hard to grasp. What blindness might you carry today? Is it a blindness of fear, despair, or unforgiveness? Perhaps it is a blindness born of pride or doubt, or simply the weariness of life's burdens. Jesus stands ready to meet you there, wherever you find yourself. His healing touch is not distant or detached. It is tender, personal, and powerful. He longs to open your eyes, not just to see the world in its physical form, but to perceive his presence, his guidance, and his love at work in your life. This story calls each of us to a deep, personal response. It invites us to ask ourselves, where do I need Jesus' healing touch most? What blindness do I long to have removed? And how will I open my eyes to him in the days ahead? The healed man's story also reminds us that faith is not always easy. It requires courage to trust Jesus fully, especially when the world around us doubts or resists the truth we hold dear. Yet, like him, we are called to be witnesses, to share the light we have received, to stand firm amid opposition, and to walk boldly in the new vision he gives. Now, I want to leave you with a question, one that invites both quiet reflection and lively conversation. How will you open your eyes to Jesus this week? Will you seek his presence in your daily moments? Will you listen for his voice in prayer and scripture? Will you allow his love to transform your doubts and fears into hope and courage? I encourage you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's create a community where we encourage one another to walk in the light, to grow in faith, and to reflect the love of Christ in all we do. Jesus' life changes everything, and today's reflection shows us his love, his truth, and his power. How will you follow him more closely this week? If this message has drawn you closer to Christ, please like this video and subscribe to Biblescope. Together, let's keep our hearts focused on him, finding light, truth, and purpose in Jesus every day. Thank you for joining us in this sacred journey. May your eyes be opened, your heart be renewed, and your spirit be filled with awe as you walk ever closer with the one who heals, restores, and loves without end.